So why do we want to repurpose content? Why not? We want to get the most bang for our buck, the most amount of mileage, the biggest impact for this content that we're already creating. The more content that you create, the more chances that you have of reaching more potential clients. And each ideal client, each person spends different amounts of time on different platforms. A platform is like Facebook or Instagram or YouTube or your email. So you might be putting out a lot of content on Facebook, but the person that you're trying to reach spends all their time on Instagram and totally misses your message. We want to avoid that. We want to repurpose the content so that we're creating more content on more platforms. And when we do that, we are meeting the rule of seven, which is this old school marketing term that says that you need to hear something 7 times in order to remember it. Now, my understanding of the rule of seven is that a consumer needs to hear a message 7 times before they are willing to take action, like to go buy something. And over the years, now it's about remembering things. However, it got started. We know from our experience, the more you hear something, the more likely you are to remember it. If you hear something 10 times, you're more likely to remember it versus if you hear it 1 time. You want to get your message out there more often to more people. And when you do that, you will appear to be everywhere. That is social credibility. When someone sees you on one platform and then another platform, it makes it look like you know what you're doing. When someone sees you everywhere, your ideal client is thinking, oh, maybe I should be listening to what they're saying. So there are 7 ways to repurpose your content. There are more. There are a ton more. This is not every single combination. These are the most common. And number 1 is actually the most common. If you already have a podcast, turn your video recorder on. Then you'll have the audio and the video. The steps to this are the simplest and the impact is the biggest. So if you are recording your podcast, just turn on the recording of video in addition to audio. That is what I have always done for my podcast. I will use QuickTime and I will record a video of myself speaking into, I have a microphone here that you can't see, speaking into the microphone. So the audio is good. It's going through the microphone. And then I also have the video. And then I can use both. I will do the editing as a video. I edit the video of me doing the podcast. Then I will export it as audio, which will go to the podcast. I will export it as video to then have the video that I can upload to YouTube. I can take snippets of to go to social media, which I'll get into in a second. If you were just to do one piece of this repurposing, this is the one to do if you're already doing a podcast or some sort of audio. The second form of content repurposing is taking your long form content and turning that into a blog post. I use the term long form content to represent anything that's on the longer end. It could be a longer blog post, it could be audio like a podcast, or it could be video, like a YouTube video. And this process has gotten a lot easier with AI. I use a piece of software called Descript. I will upload my video to it. Within about a minute or two, I will have the full transcription. Then I can type into this little command line that says, write a blog post. I can say how many words I want it to be, which I don't. I just let it do its thing, and it gets really close. I copy the text from Descript. I put it into a Word document, or I'll put it straight into my website. I will edit it. I will almost always have to edit very heavily the first paragraph and the last paragraph. I'm very sensitive to getting that hook, the first paragraph, to sound good and to sound compelling. What it does in the middle is summarize the content that I gave it, and it normally does a really good job. And then I'll edit the conclusion to make it to include the right call to action. But my goal here is I want to get my messaging into the brains of my ideal clients. And if they just don't want to listen to a podcast, that shouldn't bother me. I will find another way for you to learn what I'm teaching. So on to number 3, the third strategy for content repurposing is taking your long form content and turning it into email. This is extremely similar to creating the blog post. For example, I use Descript. Instead of saying write a blog post, I will say write an email newsletter, and it will get me pretty close. Again, I will edit the first paragraph and last paragraph, and everything in the middle is pretty close. There are other ways of getting this information. ChatGPT, for example, will do a really good job of doing the processing, but it needs the transcription. There are other tools that you can use to get the transcription. In the past, I used to use rev.com. That's REV. Back in the day, well, for me, it was like 2019, 2020, and they were one of the very few tools out there. They would have a human listen to the video or audio and they would type it out, and you would get the transcription back within a couple hours. It was a little over $1 a minute, but they did it. It was great. And now we can have a machine do it, and it does a really good job. If you're looking to get the transcription these days, again, you can use Rev. V.io is another option. In Vimeo, when you go to edit the video, it will have the text, and you can actually edit the video based off of editing the text. It's a pretty cool feature. There are some tiers of Zoom where if you are saving your recording on their cloud, then they will also be able to give you the transcription. Once you have the transcription, then you can use your favorite AI tool, ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, whatever it is for you. And if all of that is like things that you don't want to think about, just go use Descript. It's all in one. It has everything that you need. The fourth strategy for repurposing your content is taking your podcast and turning it into an audiogram. This is a pretty natural thing to do when you have an audio and then you want to make it visual. The steps to this are to find the highlight of your podcast, something that you want to share with other people, something that you think is compelling, export it, and then use Canva or Descript, whatever software you want to use to create the audiogram. Now let me break that down a little bit. Define the podcast highlight, the little blip. So if we're talking about social media, you want it to be about 30 to 60 seconds. And I find that the easiest way to find highlights is to read through the text, not to re-listen through the whole podcast. If your episode is like 40 minutes, I mean, even if it's 10 minutes, you don't want to have to listen to all 10 minutes to figure out which part you want to include. Again, well, this is turning into an advertisement for Descript. Not my intention, but Descript, you will upload the audio or video, it will give you the transcription, and then you're able to look through the transcription to see which parts you want to include. It also has a feature where you can say find interesting sections, and it will just go highlight the parts that it finds interesting. Now, I don't mind just scanning through the text and finding it myself. Now, however you go about getting that highlight, that 30 to 60, it can be up to 90 seconds if you're going into Reels. However you get that segment, you can bring it into Canva or Descript. Those are great for audiograms. If you started in Descript, you can end in Descript with this workflow because it will have this moving waveform. If you put a visual in that's an image that has something to do with your podcast or you can put this moving waveform over it that indicates that there's sound. It's something like 80% of people scrolling through social media are listening without sound or are consuming it without sound. So by having that moving waveform, that tells them that they're missing something. They should go turn their sound on. The fifth strategy for repurposing your content is taking your long form video and splicing and dicing it into a reel. A reel needs to be less than 90 seconds. When you hear Reels, social media Reels, they're referring to both Facebook and Instagram. They both have their form of Reels. And the way that you go about creating the reel is very similar to creating the audiogram, except you're working with video. You are finding the highlight, splice that, add filter, words, effects, whatever you want in order to make it more compelling, and then it goes into Facebook or Instagram. I mean, it can go into more platforms also. Now again, Descript has a very good workflow for this. When you have uploaded your video, you can have it find your highlights or you find the highlights reading through the text. You can add a filter, words, effects directly in Descript. The programs that I used to use are Captions app, CapCut. They are good, but Descript is better, and the biggest reason why it's better is because it offers so many tools all in one. So I'm not exporting out of one tool and uploading into another tool. Another note about video and Descript. Another thing that I discovered when I started using Descript is that it has this auto fix eye contact, so that when I'm recording a video, I can be reading from a script that is on my screen, and then when I'm done, I can click a button and it will turn my eyes so that they're looking at the screen. It is amazing. I'm not using that now. I don't think it's as important now, and I don't think it will do it if it just has my video in the corner of the screen. But that alone takes like 30 minutes off of every podcast that I've ever done, because it almost eliminates how much editing I do of the video or of the podcast. Sure, I take a little bit more time to write out the script, but honestly, I'm more comfortable that way, and then I can just fly through the recording, and then it's almost in its final state at that point. Also, about Descript, something that I have not found another solution to is that it does really good screen recording. Now, I have a lot of requirements for my screen recording. This is done using Descript. Number one is that I wanted to use the audio from my microphone, and it goes through my MacBook, and it uses the voice isolation feature that is in Mac OS, which is so good. When I first started podcasting, I mean, it was like 9 months ago. I had all this foam pieces around me trying to dampen sound, and I would turn off a dehumidifier and a refrigerator, and none of that is necessary now. And I can record with my 2-year-old and a nanny banging around right above me. The last thing I'll say about Descript is that I have a referral code below. There's a lot that you can do on the free program. For example, there's like 10 hours of transcription that you can do for free. So if you want to get started, that is a link right there to get started. I want you to know that I would not recommend something unless it was something that I use and use often. And I should clarify, there is no other product or service that I recommend currently. This is it. This really stands out as being very, very helpful. Okay, on to content repurposing. Don't get me. Oh, and I also like that I can move around my video so that if my video is covering up part of my slides, I can just move it around. There really is no other combination of software that can do that. Okay, back to what we're talking about here is that the sixth concept of repurposing content is that turning your long form content to a social post. Again, a lot of these concepts are cut and copy from previous strategies that I've talked about. You're taking your long form transcription and you're turning it into a shorter piece of content. AI does a great job of summarizing what that long form piece of content is. Like I've said, I find that I usually have to figure out the hook. The good news is there's almost no manipulation needed going from your email newsletter to your social post. It is acceptable for those lengths to be the same, kind of whatever they are. So boom, if you wrote your email newsletter, very little, just change a few words, and then boom, you have your social post. And in terms of the visual, the easiest things that you could do is to use a quote from your long form content. You know, my tip here is that it's easiest to find this quote by looking through text, or use AI to say, find an interesting quote. All right, moving on to the last strategy for repurposing content, and that is using multiple sources to create a long form content. So a bunch of smaller pieces of content to create something longer. That longer thing could be an ebook, could be a course. You could be creating content section by section or module by module. If it sounds really intimidating to create a course, make one module or one lesson and then release it as your podcast, as a YouTube, as whatever it is for you. That is actually what I have been doing. Many lessons in this course I have released as a podcast. I've released as a YouTube video. It's been in my email newsletters. It's been on social. This is extremely useful. It takes this big project that sounds overwhelming to start, and it breaks it down into bite-sized pieces that I can do every week. I mean, I have to be creating my podcast anyway. I may as well be using that content to build something bigger. Another example would be to create a book where each week you create a blog post. That blog post could be one chapter or one part of a chapter. When you put 10 different blog posts together, you start to get a lot of length and it starts to become book length. You could go a step further. Each blog post that you wrote per week, each of those could be turned into an email newsletter. So you didn't just write a blog post. With a few tweaks, it becomes your newsletter to your audience. And how about a third example of, well, you could do it for your group program content. You can do this a couple different ways. For example, if you're just creating the outline for your group coaching program, and say you were going to do only group coaching sessions, once a week, a group coaching session. You might do some training at the beginning of it. And so you have a little outline of what that training for each week is going to be. As you're coming up with that content, you could spit it out in a podcast, spit it out on video, and there's your YouTube. You could repurpose that into a blog post. So that when it comes time to actually doing the group coaching course, you're very familiar with the content. You've already taught it. Or if your group coaching program is going to have a group coaching part of it and an online digital content part of it as well, like modules and lessons, videos, you can create those videos ahead of time. You could use them as podcasts. You could use them as YouTube videos, and then they become part of your group coaching program. Now, just to be clear, you don't want to be selling something that you have also available as free. So I do recommend that you go back and delete the content that you produced week by week so that you don't have the same content available as part of a course as well as part of something that you gave away for free. That doesn't feel right. Okay, that is it. That is not the whole list of how to repurpose content. You can see that there are some themes about how you can reuse what you've already created. What I want to leave you with is don't do all of these. You don't need to. You want to be creating as much content as you reasonably can without burning yourself out, without feeling like it's super hard. But once you get started on these, each one becomes so much easier. The first podcast episode that I ever did, it took me a week. It took me like 5 days of working on it to create one episode. And now I get each episode done in about an hour and a half. And it's not intimidating. It's something that I have to do that I end up is on my calendar, but it is not something that I'm scared to do. I don't procrastinate. I don't dread it. Each of these things gets easier the more you do them. And here's what to do is that do some. Pick at least one. The first one of turning on your video recorder when you're doing your podcast, that is the easiest one. That is the lowest hanging fruit. If you have a podcast, just go do that. And the ones that you choose are the ones that are reusing content that you are already creating. So you're getting the biggest impact by the efforts that you're already doing.